We've been contacted by the officials in Tallahassee, Florida, who are coming to Otter Creek to interview us personally in the ongoing investigation of all the corruption of Russ The Suss, Mary, Jail is Scary, Laura Mott, and the list goes on and on. The people of Otter Creek have questions about this last town hall meeting, and so do you, such as Kathy Hoot. She says, when is Russ The Suss's year up? Well, it could be really soon, sooner rather than later, understanding that the authorities are coming from Tallahassee to Otter Creek. Yes, we've been contacted personally about those in the authority of the investigation of Otter Creek. All the corruption, all the things that were going on. They're going to meet with us one-on-one in an interview. Now, we don't know yet if we're going to be allowed to actually film that interview. And in all reality, we probably don't want to film that and release that before the investigation is done. We already figured they will not allow us to film, even though we will ask. But we don't want to release any of that. We don't want Russ The Suss, Mary, knowing exactly what they're asking and then trying to cover their tracks before they get to them. His term's up in April of 2024, but the authorities come in and make it shorter. I think that'd be a great blessing. Don Kime says, is it possible that some of these comments in the audience members is driven by the members of the council? I don't think it's possible. I think it's a reality. Now, I also have to stress that I don't have any proof of that, but I think you can see the signals and the signs going from Russell to certain members. And you're all thinking of the same person I'm thinking, Albert Fuller. Why now? Why is he speaking now? Is there an agenda? Yeah, there's an agenda. Now, you can say, Jeremy, everybody's got an agenda there. Even I have an agenda. My agenda is to quench and to remove all corruption, for people to be treated fairly, with respect, with honor, and love to reign in the town of Otter Creek. We're not there yet, but one day we hope to be. Tammy has a long question. I'll try and get to one portion of it, okay? Chandy says, did anyone else notice that when Vicky was saying her piece, Russ was not paying attention or showing her any respect? Now, she's got a whole lot more questions, and that's the only one that I want to focus in on. Yeah, I noticed that. Completely and totally disrespectful to a visitor, a longtime resident of Otter Creek, sharing her heart, how it's broken over the shamefulness, over the disgust of how they are behaving. And what does he do? The exact same thing that she is actually sharing that is breaking her heart. Complete and total. This man has no respect for women whatsoever. No respect for women, whether they're in power, whether they're in a position, whether they are speaking in a town hall meeting. It is beyond worrisome for me, because God created us in his image, man and woman, not just man and woman. And George brings things to the table that I lack in. I bring things to the table that George lacks in, and together we complete one another. We need both men and women, with an emphasis in Otter Creek on these women who are doing an incredible job. 17 Centus 88 has a really good question. Again, long comment, but I'm gonna get to the meat of the one question that I want to answer. If you're an elected official, it's your job to be in the light for the community. Absolutely agree. Also, you need to quit being so weak as to being asked questions about your community. How is the ex-mayor Russell allowed to remove anything from the town's offices without the oversight of the new mayor? You mean when he did this? There was no new mayor then. Now, there was an election, and there were council members that were voted in, but remember, Russ The Suss illegally shut down Town Hall. He claimed there was an emergency, and then he told Channel 20 there was no emergency. For months, Town Hall was shut down. All these elected officials were supposed to be voted in, and they were supposed to be sworn in, and then the mayor was supposed to take over control of the council, right? But no, he kept that away for months and months at a time. And that's when he was in the building removing evidence. Tara Beard, she's got a long comment as well. There's a lot of people that got a lot to say about this last meeting. And she has some pretty point remarks and questions. The dramatic remarks of "I'm scared" are ridiculous. What exactly are you scared of? I can't answer that question for that individual who mentioned that in the meeting. But Tara goes on to say, if you want to be friends with your neighbor, why does the camera change that? Again, I can't answer that question either for the individual in the meeting. She says, the lack of logic is senseless. The corruption has been eroding the town for decades, and now that a light has been put on it, the cameras are blamed, and now people can't go to anyone without being scared. This is what I want you to focus on. Why weren't you scared when the town was being destroyed and no one spoke up? I mean, honestly, I got to agree with you, Tara. That's the most fearful thing possible. For people to be doing things in the dark and nobody standing up. For people to be doing things that are uncontrollably wrong. And for people to be like, you know what? That's the way it's always been. That's the way it's always going to be. We'll just keep letting it happen. I can't fathom how they weren't afraid that somebody, somewhere, sometime was going to catch them. And now that they're been caught, now they're scared of a camera? You should have been afraid that nobody did anything, that there was no justice, that there was no accountability. These individuals could have gotten away with anything at your expense, residents of Otter Creek. Looks like Pixie Twitch has been doing some timing. A little bit of Mary math. She says, 17 minutes in, my head hurts. Apparently, Don was asking for a document that didn't even exist for 17 minutes. Okay, Pixie Twist is talking about a letter. Don continues to harp in on this letter that he's told over and over again, a letter does not exist. Well, I want the letter. I've requested a letter. Well, the letter doesn't exist. So how hard is it to understand that the letter doesn't exist and you're requesting something that you can't have because it's not in existence? I'm sure we'd all like a unicorn as well. George, how many unicorns would you like? 2 or 3?
Let's get some dragons too.
Judy Kogan wants to know, so when Don and Russ are gone, will Madam Mayor be able to get a good lawyer? All right, Judy, you ask a really good question because there's like half and half split thoughts on this. Half the people think, well, lawyers won't come in because there's YouTubers and cameras now. And the other half go, lawyers are not going to come in because of Don and Russ and Mary. So let's back up a little bit. Let's go back to 2020. George and I come into Otter Creek. We go to the first dysfunctional meeting we have ever been to in our lives, and we look at each other and go, what did we just witness? Much like many of you have when you watch these videos. And we sat there scratching our heads. Now, at that point in time, Otter Creek had the best lawyer in the county representing them. You have to understand, the best lawyer was representing them. And he stepped down. Now, I also want to share with you that not a single person was filming these meetings. Not a YouTuber, not somebody putting them on Facebook. Nobody was filming these meetings. He stepped down because of Russ The Suss, because of Mary Mathis Scary, because of the complete and total dysfunction, because of the legal liability it places him in representing a bunch of people that don't know how to be mature adults. They lost lawyers based on their own actions, not by a northerner coming in and buying land in the South and turning a camera on his cell phone. They lost lawyers based on the reputation that everybody in the county knows about Otter Creek. Lawyers don't want to represent because of Russ The Suss. Lawyers don't want to represent because of Don the Cons. Lawyers don't want to represent because of Stuart Stewarts, who you've yet to see. Well, you might have seen a little bit on a couple videos. Lawyers don't want to represent a dysfunctional town that puts them in a tremendous amount of legal liability. And now you have cameras showing that as well. Now, that's not an issue. The cameras aren't an issue for a lawyer. The lawyers are filmed all day in court. That's not an issue. Cameras only film what is actually happening. They don't want to be a part of the dysfunction and the legal liability. So when the people who are the legal liabilities, Don the Con, Russ the Suss, Mary, those people, once they're gone, Otter Creek has a chance at getting one of the best lawyers back again. Elusive Concepts has quite the comment and question. He says, I've been following this from the beginning, and I remember when there was a time where I would sort of root for Don, but I must not know exactly what went wrong. When did he change sides? He used to ask all the questions that needed asked and argued very valid points. And then one night he just shows up in the criminal's pocket. Don, where did you go wrong? What dirt does Russ the Suss have on you? I agree with you 100%. So Russ the Suss was Don's mortal enemy when Russ the Suss was the mayor. And Don did ask all of the right questions. And Don did say, hey, you're doing this illegally. Now all of a sudden, Don is saying Russ isn't corrupt. So before Don's calling Russ out, now Don is on the side of Russ. So what's the issue? Does Don not want to have to clean up of his property? By the way, if you live in a city and you don't want to clean up your property, don't live in a city. It truly is that simple. There are codes when you live in a city. If you don't want to follow those codes, go live where there aren't any codes, right? Pretty easy. But is that it? Is that all? Is there something else? Is there something with Don the Con's record? Well, we've gotten Don the Con's record, and yes, he had felony charges, which were then dropped to misdemeanors. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Pure and simple. Don does not like Zim. Russ does not like Zim. So the enemy of my enemy is now my friend, even if I'm the enemy of my friend. You've seen the same thing happen with Lynette and John Crook. They posted horrific signs all over the whole town about Russell and Stewart and Mary and Attorney Warm. But now what are they doing? Last we saw, Lynette, John Crook, and Russ the Suss were at the Levy County Courthouse together. Lori wants to know, what job would Russ the Suss do as a council member? Hope it won't be a job that can be abused. Now, this is where Madam Mayor Teresa is saying there are departments and each council should be over a department, whether it's park and recs, it could go on and on, water, right, maintenance, things along those lines, administration. And so Lori wants to know, what would Russ be over? Well, Russ held himself over everything before. He would not allow anybody to be over anything because he had to have complete and total control. Now, most of us would call that narcissism, but I think narcissism is a word that is completely and totally abused in today's culture, which, by the way, it's usually females calling males narcissist. I want to be very clear. Females can be narcissist as well. And the other word that is completely and totally overused inappropriately is bipolar. And it's usually males calling females bipolar, which, by the way, men can be bipolar as well. So what's Russ gonna do? Well, he prided himself on that water. He would come to every meeting, not give you any information, and tell you, man, our water sure is good. Holy moly questions. My goodness. 6 different questions. Should I try answering them all from user XG9GR6XL1G? Please put your name in there. Make one up for all we care. Okay.
It could be Harry Butts.
It could be
Actually, that one's
Seymour
taken.
Butts if you want. All right, question number 1. Did Mary ever get arrested? Okay, so Mary did get arrested, but the trial was dismissed by the prosecutor. So the prosecutor messaged us and said, hey, this touch was so light and with her age, we're not going to press charges. Are you okay with that? And we said, yes, we're okay with that. And this was well before anybody else started to talk about this situation. So we already know Mary was not going to be charged with the actual battery. Was she arrested? Yes. Was she charged in the courts? No. That was dropped almost immediately. Number 2, did Bikini Gate Crasher ever get arrested or pay restitution? All right, Bikini Gate Crasher has court dates. She has had so many court dates, it's ridiculous. I actually just got more information today from Victims Assistance, and her next dates are, I'll just show you. It's insane what her next dates are. So you have October 16th, 9 a.m., she has a trial status conference. October 23rd, 8:30 a.m., she has a pretrial conference. October 23rd, 9 a.m., jury selection. So that's where Bikini Gatecrasher stands right now. We have never met her in person or in life, and as of right now, they're telling us we don't need to be there unless we want to be there. And we probably won't go because there's really no need for us to go. They have all the evidence already. There's more important things in our life. All right, number 3, what happened to the fake radio hostess? Well, you can't have a radio show if there isn't actually one there. So, fake radio hostess. Oh, wait, hold a second. She got fired. Lynette fired her. And then Lynette said she was going to sabotage her entire opportunity to come to Otter Creek, which we all know she was never going to come to Otter Creek in the first place. All right, number 4. Why doesn't CPS do anything about Sweet Turtle Baby? Can't answer that question. Only CPS can. Number 5. Has no one tarred and feathered Russ the Lush? To my knowledge, he has never been tarred and feathered, but that's only to my knowledge. I've only been in Otter Creek for a little while. Number 6, did we ever hear the flirty emails between Mary and Attorney Warm? You have not yet. It's still to come. Jenny Morgan has a lot to say here. If Russell seems to intimidate the elderly, don't you think the people of Otter Creek are afraid of this intimidation will continue as Russell is still on the council? Any department either Russell or Don looks after will never get anything done, as neither of them want the town to prosper. Well, that is one of our concerns, is are these people so held down, so depressed under this intimidation, under whatever he has on them, that they will continue on in intimidation? For example, and this is just an example, for an individual that has ever been abused, they typically, 9 times out of 10, go to another abusive relationship. For whatever reason, they've been under abuse, and then they flee and they go to another abusive relationship as if this is okay. It's not okay. And so the people and the residents of Otter Creek are really, truly in this abusive relationship with Russ the Suss. And once they get freed from it, they find themselves fleeing right back under it again. So, is the intimidation something that they're scared of? They would have to answer that for themselves. I can tell you personally, I have absolutely no fear of Russ the Suss whatsoever. Dorothy's asking a question. Is that guy not a resident of Otter Creek, Florida? Dorothy, you kind of didn't tell me which guy you're talking about. Now, I think you could be talking about a couple different guys. If you're talking about Albert Fuller, no, he is not a resident of Otter Creek, Florida. He's a resident of Bronson, or is it Williston, George? Williston, Florida. Now, if you're talking about the other guy who's sitting in there with a camera, no, he is not a resident of Otter Creek, Florida, which is funny because there are people who continue to tell him, you should run for council. He legally can't run for council. He does not live in the town of Otter Creek. That can't happen. If you're talking about the guy, what other guy would Dorothy be talking about?
There is the dog catcher.
Oh, the dog catcher. No. That's not the guy she was talking. Me? Am I not a resident of Otter Creek? Even though I am there part-time, half the year, 6 months, I have the legal right to actually vote as a resident of Otter Creek. Because in Florida law, if my intentions are to be a full-time resident, then I can vote. And George and I have all intentions of being full-time residents in Otter Creek. We're not leaving. We're not going anywhere. We've invested quite a bit into the properties and the renovation of historic properties, such as the schoolhouse, such as the old church property, such as the ranch. And so we are even residents of Otter Creek. Now, our full-time residency is here at Hale's headquarters, but our residency at any time could transfer to Florida, and it will soon. ABET says, is Gail speaking up regards how she was kept quiet during Russ's tenure regarding all the things that weren't done officially at literally every meeting she sat in as a committee member? Well, that is a good question. I'm trying to think off the top of my head if Gail has mentioned things. Now, I know Gail has been outspoken saying that she does not believe things were done right under Russ The Suss's leadership, okay? So Gail has publicly said that she does not believe that things were done right. And so has she spoken up about the things that were done wrong? I'm not sure off the top of my head that she's done that in a town hall council meeting. So I would have to go back and review everything, but I can't think of an instant off the top of my head. Now, that also doesn't mean that she won't do that in the future. Remember, Tallahassee, the authorities are coming to Otter Creek. And I have no doubt whatsoever they are going to want to talk to Gail. As a matter of fact, I will tell them, you need to talk to Gail. Marty says he's got a big question. Where were all these people questioning the administration when Russ was the mayor? Kind of makes you think about things. Marty, you are completely and totally correct. Now, when Russ the Suss was mayor, if you spoke up about anything against him, whether you were a Jeremy Hales, whether you were one of the Hudson sisters, whether you were anybody, you've even see Robert Martin. Remember, his deceased wife, Lord bless her, Clea, would speak up, and Russ the Suss would, number one, start a fight, number two, try and kick you out, and in the case of Jeremy Hales, had the sheriff there who refused to remove me when he said, will you all remove him? And they looked at him and went, eh. You can see how that can be intimidating, and the residents would be afraid to speak up, if even show up for the meetings, right? Well, it's a new administration. Our new mayor welcomes people to speak up, whether it's for or against. She's listening to all sides, and she's taking that counsel and that wisdom, and that's a positive thing. Do you understand that people were afraid to speak up, and now everyone is speaking up, right? Now, you have to also be careful of who you listen to. George and I receive thousands of comments on what we do every single day. I got to tell you, and I know you're not going to want to hear it, but most of those comments, we don't take them to heart. It can be everything from, you're the greatest thing in the world, you are amazing, I love you so much. We don't take that to heart. And it could be everything from, I hate you, I want you to die. We don't take that to heart. The comments that mean the most to us are the people who have invested in our lives the most. That's who has value as they speak to us. And so you have to sort through all of that and find the nuggets of gold from the golden people in your life. The people that you know have your best interests at heart at all the time. Remember, the people of Otter Creek entrusted these individuals as they voted them to make wise decisions for them. And so the voices they need to listen to are not from everybody in Levy County, everybody in the state of Florida, everybody in every state in the United States, everybody from around the world. Everybody's got a voice and something to say, right? Those aren't the voices they need to listen to. They need to listen to the constituents that voted them in. And that's why I'm so impressed with what Gail has done. Gail is going house to house to house to house, and she's listening. She's literally listening to what they have to say. Now, in my previous video, I also mentioned, hey, didn't anybody care when my property was used as a dump? I want to be very clear. There was one person that did care. This person put in hours and hours and hours of their own time, their own investment, their own money, and their own sweat. You want to know who it was? It was council member Gail. Gail cared to make a difference and make it right. Gail took initiative to correct it. And it wasn't even her problem. Do you understand? This is a woman in a community that corrected something that wasn't even her problem. This is a person I can rally behind. And this is a person that needs to be representing the people of Otter Creek. She actually cares and makes a difference. Scatterjoy asking one of the best questions I've seen so far. Just wondering, did Mr. Fuller respond to an advertisement for the position that Mayor Meeks hired him for? Albert Fuller goes on and on about advertising for this position for permitting, right? I wish this question would have been asked. I wish this individual would have been there at that meeting. Albert Fuller, What advertisement did you actually respond to? That's right, none. Russ the Suss did not make an advertisement. You were hired without an advertisement. And now you want an advertisement? How does any of this make sense? The hypocrisy is amazing. You understand. I'm a person of logic. I'm a person of business. I've obviously been somewhat successful in business. This would never, ever fly in the business world. Well, we need to make an advertisement. We've got to make sure that all the members know exactly all the people who are qualified in the area. What did they know about you? Russ the Suss literally told them, I hired him. Peggy James says, can somebody help me here? Why would you sign a loan when you had the money to purchase the truck? Oh boy, here we go. Russ the Suss telling everybody that the truck was donated by the county. Therefore, it should go back to the county. When Madam Mayor did a deal with Chiefland and got fire protection for the residents of Otter Creek on a trade with the truck. Chiefland Fire Department can actually use the truck. Otter Creek never used it. And Russ the Suss got caught in his lie. The county never, ever donated the truck. The truck was purchased and a loan was taken out by the town under the authority of Russell Meeks Sr. Yet another lie. So why would you get a loan when you know money is coming? All I've got to say is this is the biggest red flag for embezzlement that I think I've ever seen. A long name with the last word fart in it, which is all that matters to me. Why are you giggling? Why? Okay.
Wait, can I see the name again?
Yeah. It almost looks like George and
I was
fart.
gonna say, is it George spelled backwards?
All right, let's.
It is. It's George spelled backwards.
Okay, art fart. It's backwards George art fart.
Uh-huh.
All right, there you go. Backwards George art fart wants to know. Unbelievable, as usual, Jeremy. I'm wondering, does Madam Mayor have any kind of relationship with Russ the Suss outside of the monthly meeting? Okay, does Madam Mayor have a relationship with Russ the Suss outside of the monthly meeting? Here's what I can share with you in regards to Madam Mayor. She treats everybody equally. Regardless of what you see going on in the meeting, she is kind to everybody. She is pleasant to everybody. She goes above and beyond to help, regardless of what has been said or done to her. For example, and this goes for her husband, Brett, as well. For example, Lynette and John Crook said despicable, horrific things about them online. And when John Crook could not even get up and he was laying on the shed that he was living in illegally in Florida, Madam Mayor Therese and Brett went over to help them because nobody else in the town will help them. Even with all the horrific things they said and did to them, they still went over and helped them. John Crook urinated all over Madam Mayor Therese as she helped get him in an ambulance. Now, if that doesn't tell you the quality of our mayor currently, nothing else will. Now, do they have a relationship with Russ outside of town hall? I'm going to say a pleasant one. They're not going to snub their nose. She's not going to yell obscenities. But I seriously doubt that she's inviting him over to play cards and have pizza and movie night. Watts Drone Will Travel wants to know, who in the world would want to be involved in the workings of this council for $100 a month? Oh, by the way, the closed captions are hilarious. All right, so first of all, we don't do the closed captioning. That happens automatically on the platform to where it is broadcasted to. So we have nothing to do with the closed captioning. And we agree, most of the time they are hilarious. So who would want to be involved for $100 a month? Well, the only people that would want to be involved for $100 a month are people that really, really need that $100, right? So if you were to tell me, hey, I'll give you $100 a month if you serve on the council in Otter Creek, I would look at you and go, yeah, right. No way in Hales. Or it's people that want to feel like they have control over something or power over something. Now, you have to put in perspective, a town of Otter Creek, there's nothing to lord power over. What, dirty water? So people who feel insignificant want to feel significant over something. That's another reason. And that's all bad reasons, right? Okay, you can say that needing $100 a month isn't a bad reason. They could still have the right reasons in their heart and need the money, and therefore they're willing to do it. The other reason is a good reason. What about the individual who just truly, really cares? They care about their town, they care about the people, and it has nothing to do with the money. That's the type of person that we need on that council. People who can't help but serve. It's part of their DNA. They love to serve others, they care about others, and they want the best for others. I'd love to see 5 individuals serve the town of Otter Creek that way.
Carol Schultz says,
All right, I thought Belinda's not a member of the council, ? If this is the case, why does she have so much say when the elected members of the town council are speaking amongst themselves? All right, let's pause right there, Carol. Number one, you need to understand municipality and the way it is governed and the way it works. If you were to go to your city, your town, your village, whatever it is, the mayor is not typically running the show. The clerk is, or what's termed the manager. Most times, 99% out of 100, the clerk is the town manager. The town manager, or in this case, the clerk, is the one that does all the day-to-day activities, is the one that makes it happen. So any town hall meeting you go to, that town manager or the clerk is usually the one giving all of the information and answering all of the questions. The mayor is typically the figurehead. Again, think of this as overseas. You have the prime minister who's really doing the work, but then you have the king or the queen or the princes who have the figurehead in the title. But who's doing the work? The prime minister is doing the work. So this is the way that it works 99.99999% of the time. The clerk is the town manager, the town manager is the clerk, and they have all the information and they're doing the work. That's why Russ The Suss said, ain't no clerk, ain't no show. But when Belinda's the clerk, he don't want no show. But there's a clerk. Now, Madam Mayor Therese has been doing quite a bit of that work as well. Not because she wants to, because she cares about her community. She cares that the work is actually getting done. But 9 times out of 10, again, it's the clerk. That's why she has so much say, because it's her job. That'd be like saying, Jeremy, you are the mayor of Otter Creek. All right, Jeremy, tell us all about the bids that you gathered on the computers. I didn't gather any bids on the computers. My clerk did. George, tell us all about the bids. It's exactly what I would do. If they asked me, I'd go, George, tell me about the bids on the computers. George does all of our vacation planning. And if you were to ask me, hey, what's all the details for the vacation? I would go, I don't know. I'll just pay for it. And then I would go, George, what are all the details for the vacation? She has the information, she's done the work, and that's why Belinda is giving all the details out to the council. She's the one that has it all. Animal says, Jeremy, why don't they just make the workshops mandatory? If you don't attend, how will you know what's going on with your job? Well, Animal, that would be a great thing to do. Make it all mandatory, right? Except at this point in time, I don't believe that would be legal. As far as I know, it's not. I know if you miss a meeting or 2 meetings in a row, you don't get paid for the second one. And honestly, I mean, what's the $100 a month anyway? Really, should these individuals be getting paid? I wish these people were doing it out of the goodness of their heart because they actually care about the town. Not somebody coming in going, you give me my $100 a month right now, as Russ The Suss has done in the very, very recent past. So I don't believe you can make it mandatory for their position. If you could, potentially you could put that in the charter and make it a job description. Now, I can tell you that I have run organizations and I've had organizations with charters or what we call constitution and bylaws. And in that constitution and bylaws, I actually I added it later. So it's not in the primary constitution and bylaws, but added later, I made an actual expectations or a job description for all of my board members. So my board members had to adhere to this. Well, first of all, when I was looking for a board member, they had to have this expectation, this expectation, this expectation. Now, when they became a board member and they were voted in, this was expected of them to do, this was expected of them to do, and it was all in paper and it was all in writing. So potentially they could do that. They could make a job description for a council member. And in there, potentially they could say, you are expected to be at all workshops. Now, there are going to be times when you can't. For example, I can't speak for Russell or for Don. As far as I know, they're unemployed, they are retired, and I have no idea what they do with their free time. I do know that Madam Mayor Therese is running a campground full-time. I do know that Vice Mayor Zim has a construction business full-time. I do know that Council Member Gale has a full-time job as well and is probably putting more than full-time in. She's probably getting more than 40 hours a week. So there are going to be times where you can't make a workshop. But you also understand that council meets once a month. Okay, so that's 1 day out of every roughly 30. That's 12 days out of 365. Normally, you can adjust your schedule. Let's say you throw in a couple workshops, okay? So now let's say 24 days, 36. Let's say 36 days you're needed out of 365. If you have to miss one, that's understandable. Missing 2 out of that ratio and knowing that you can be somewhat flexible with your schedule and plan in advance, I think that's a good thing that you could say, listen, we expect you to be here. This is what we hired you for. This is what the people voted you for. Please do your job.
Slay says,
Jeremy, I thought you want the town to go unincorporated, but yet you're willing to purchase or provide computers. Slay, absolutely. So the town isn't unincorporated. And until it is, if it ever is, I'm still willing to help any way I can. That's like saying George needs help with something, but I'm not going to help her because she has cancer. Now, we both know that George has gone through 2 bouts of cancer. And whether I have George with me for 1 more day, for 1 more year, for 10 more years, for 50 more years, it doesn't matter. I'm going to do whatever I can to help George, right? So let's put this in perspective with the town now. So the town needs a computer. The town isn't unincorporated. I'm going to do what I can to help the town, regardless of whether I think it's best for them to unincorporate. They're not unincorporated yet, and therefore I don't want them to fail. I'll help them any way I possibly can. The biggest question I get, and this phone is filled with them, what is going on with the investigation and the lawsuit? The investigation, as I've shared already, we've been contacted by the authorities in Tallahassee, Florida, the capital. They are coming to Otter Creek to sit down with me and George one-on-one for a full interview and investigation, to go through all of our videos, to go through all of the evidence, and to meet with other members of the town to gather information. What's going to happen after that? I don't know. Who are they all going to talk to? Again, I don't know. But I do know they're coming to talk to us